Everybody has that childhood classic, a nostalgic gem that no matter how good it really was, you'll always adore it. For some, it was the early shooters like GoldenEye or Doom. Others, platformers like Mario or Sonic. But for me, for a kid born in 1999, the games I grew up with were Xbox 360 classics, Star Wars Battlefront, Halo 3, and more specifically in this case, Lord of the Rings Conquest. And oh my, I haven't done one of these videos in quite some time. But Lord of the Rings Conquest did something incredible. For context, for many of the newer viewers that perhaps haven't seen my other videos in this series, I take a game that I grew up with, love, or am astounded by some great feat that it's achieved, and I like to showcase the ins and outs, the intricacies, the history, and the future of titles with a similar name. Lord of the Rings Conquest was never even the best Lord of the Rings game by a long margin, but for reasons that I'm about to get into, I adored it, and I still do to this day. But where did it come from? The year was 2005. Pandemic Studio just released a sequel to a game that went by the name of Star Wars Battlefront, the second in which taking a whole new approach to scale. Spanning across both prequel and original Star Wars trilogies, it brought immersive new heroes, powers, maps, and of course space battles. Being able to hop into a clone transport, land in an enemy hangar and let your friends spawn inside to take out the enemy's cruisers from within, or even hopping into enemy ships, turning them to face the wall and cackle as the AI flies into a fiery explosion. Oh my god, there were so many ways that you could break and abuse that game, and that's why I loved it. Star Wars Battlefront 2 was by no doubt a massive success, even to this day having a PC player base and of course spawning perhaps two of the most infamous remakes of all time. But the focus here isn't on the game itself, it's within the developer, Pandemic. Somewhat of an ironic name in the year 2021, but they too back then spread like wildfire, becoming a hot commodity and having EA at their helm. They were set to do big things. So, in 2009, EA said, "Hey guys, we loved what you did with Star Wars Battlefront and Battlefront 2. We have this IP here. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's quite small. It's called Lord of the Rings. I mean, it seems to be growing a bit at the moment. Could you maybe, get your Star Wars Battlefront 2 stuff and make a little baby with Lord of the Rings and see what happens?" And so Pandemic did just that. The result being Lord of the Rings Conquest. Almost an identical remake to Star Wars Battlefront 2, but with a Lord of the Rings skin on it. Telling you the story through the films, letting players get into the action themselves. But just a reskin Battlefront, you may be wondering? Surely that's just a recipe for a disaster. Well, perhaps, but for me at least, that's why I loved it. Don't you ever have a game franchise that you love? Like Total War maybe, but just think, what if this was Lord of the Rings? Or maybe you're playing a game like Kingdom Come Deliverance through the intricate stories as every character and immersing yourself in the world and think, this is cool, but what if it was set within the Seven Kingdoms? Well, that's literally what Pandemic did with Conquest. That sort of insane fan mentality was literally made into a game back in 2009 in the form of this little gem. From the campaign style, taken straight from Star Wars Battlefront 2, working your way through the stories of Middle-earth, starting at the Siege of Helm's Deep, taking down the Saboteur Uruks as they try and blow a breach in the Deeping Wall, moving forward to the mines of Moria, fighting the Balrog, and all the way to some of the favourites like the Battle of Pelennor Field or Isengard. You have two main campaigns within the game, the One Ring playing as the forces of good through the story, and then of course you have the forces of evil storyline, taking up the mantle of Saruman or Sauron, playing as the Orcs and Uruks, even trolls trying to stop the heroes from accomplishing their goals. Unlike Star Wars Battlefront 2, however, there are a few touches that weren't quite as refined. In the Galaxy Far Far Away version, custom cutscenes would be made to introduce you to a level and take you through the story up to this point. In Conquest, however, they just took clips from the film, and this lack of polish does tend to pop up every now and then throughout the game. Additionally to the campaigns, once again, there was a return to instant action, being able to set up a slew of custom game modes and maps that you can play in any order you want, on any side of the conflict you choose. Once again, heroes were a crucial addition to keep gameplay exciting, being able to transform into any character that the map called for. In Pelennor Fields, it could be Legolas, ready to take down the oncoming Oliphants. In Moria, it could be Gimli, who was called to the fray, and this was for every single map in the game. What's more is the class system returned from Star Wars Battlefront 2, with the choices of Archer, Footman, Mage or Scout, each having their own unique skill set and moves, as well as some really cool and memorable abilities. The Archer had fire, poison and power shot arrows, as well as their regular ammunition. They were also able to fire multiple projectiles at once with their special ability. The Footman had light, medium and heavy attacks, as well as the ability to light their sword on fire to deal extra damage. The Mage has, well, magic, fireballs, healing, that sort of stuff, even just hardcore smacking the enemy with their staff Gandalf style. And finally, the scout, perhaps one of the trickier classes to play, with a weak melee skill, but made up for with the ability to cloak themselves, sneak behind the enemy and assassinate them. Yep, that works on just a lowly mage or even an enemy hero that hasn't been paying attention. So you get the general gist. It's Star Wars Battlefront, but with a Lord of the Rings skin. But coming to make this video and doing a bit of research on it, despite my love for Lord of the Rings Conquest, many didn't feel the same. Most of the reviews at the time were mixed, if not negative, and although I love the game, I actually don't find myself disagreeing with many of the critics' points. Hack and slashy combat that doesn't have that much skill or substance, overpowered mage classes, weak story and a lack of content and bad multiplayer. Yeah, that sounds like Lord of the Rings Conquest. So why, might you be asking? Why do I love it? The lore and background of Lord of the Rings has always been a massively beloved thing in the fantasy world, and no other game, at least at the time, puts you so deep into the exact points of the movie. Playing as a Gondorian soldier defending the Deeping Walls, seeing your mate who you're playing split screen with get to pick Aragorn as a class and rushes to help you plug the breach and laugh as you swing through hundreds of stupid orcs that don't quite know what they're doing. Is it perfect? No, not one bit. Yet racing through the streets as Faramir on horseback, carrying a tiny little Frodo next to you, doesn't care for your perfection. Playing as a hobbit archer defending the Shire from cave trolls and orcs doesn't care for your perfection. Jumping on a cave troll's back as you slay it on top of hundreds of allies doesn't care for your perfection. It just is. Nothing more, nothing less. Lord of the Rings Conquest just is. And I admit it, in general, it's a pretty simple and basic game, nowhere near perfect. I can objectively look at it as a title and say, yeah, okay, the combat's a little bit spammy, the enemies are a bit stupid and the story's a bit rushed. But this series, this video, isn't about if a game is objectively good or not. It's whether or not I love the game. And in this game, boy, I can get way more enjoyment out of it than most other titles. The game's prime focus is on fun. It's not picture perfect or mechanically sound, but it puts you in the battles from the movies, down in the action as a soldier or a hero. I mean, you can literally walk up to a tree on some levels, hop into them, and become an ent to check around enemy orcs before dying and returning to your former self. The trolls are just parked at the side of the maps like goddamn vehicles in Star Wars Battlefront. They can absorb you and you can become one with their hulking selves. I mean, if this isn't completely stupid fun, I don't know what is. I think YouTube is an amazing place and the gaming community on the platform does wonders, but most of it's based around reviewing, diving in depth about the mechanics or the story of a game to determine its worth. And I think this criticism is so needed to keep the quality of games at a higher standard. But most people, most normal gamers like you watching at home, don't think like that. They don't analyze why they love every game, they just do. Whether it's a childhood memory, sitting on the carpet in front of my TV with my mate playing split screen, or just a general feeling. Most people just enjoy games for what they are. Temporary fun that takes you out of a scary wide world into a familiar, more beautifully crafted one. And I think people on YouTube should talk about games more in that way. Express their love for them rather than have to always be expected to analyze every part of the title. And that's what I wanted to do here. But let me know what your nostalgia game was. The warm feeling title that no matter what day, it almost made it feel worth playing. In the future, we do have a Lord of the Rings Conquest reimagined on its way, a complete modern day fan remaster with the same maps, heroes and troops, including a whole new soldier class. I've made a full overview on that, by the way, in a previous video, so make sure you go and check that out. But as well, stick around this channel because I do have some more exciting news regarding that remake very, very soon. But leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it. Leave a dislike if you didn't. But until then, I will see you in the next one.